the observation deck of Galactic Combat Academy Station Kepler 7, stretched across 300 meters of reinforced transparent aluminum. Lieutenant Jake Palmer stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching a cargo transport dock in the distance. The station orbited a blue giant star, and the light made everything look cold and sharp. He had been at the academy for 6 months now, and he still was not used to training alongside aliens who could break steel bars with their bare hands. Behind him, other cadets filed into the assembly hall. Jake turned and followed them inside. The hall could hold 5,000 beings, and today it was almost full. Cadets from 40 different species sat in sections organized by their home worlds. The human section was small, just 32 cadets out of the entire academy population. Jake found his seat next to Danny Cooper, another human who had arrived on the same transport ship from Earth. "Big announcement today," Danny whispered. "I heard it's about the tournament." Jake nodded but said nothing. The annual Galactic Combat Tournament was 3 months away, and everyone knew it was coming. The tournament was more than just a competition. It was a chance for each species to demonstrate their combat capabilities to potential employers across the galaxy. Security firms, planetary defense forces, and even some governments recruited directly from tournament winners. For humans, it was also a chance to prove they belonged at the academy at all. The lights dimmed and a massive holographic display activated above the center of the hall. Instructor Vex Thor materialized on the stage below. He was Zentari, a species that looked like someone had taken a bear and a tiger and made them walk upright on 2 powerful legs. His fur was deep gray with black stripes, and his amber eyes swept across the assembled cadets with barely concealed pride. Vex Thor was the head combat instructor, and he ran the tournament every year. "Cadets!" His voice boomed through the hall without any need for amplification. Zentari vocal cords were naturally powerful. In 90 days, you will face the challenge that separates the worthy from the weak. The Galactic Combat Tournament tests not just your strength, but your honor, your discipline, and your right to serve as protectors across civilized space. Jake had heard this speech before. Every instructor gave some version of it. He glanced at Danny, who was taking notes on a datapad, even though the entire speech would be recorded and available later. Vex Thor continued, his clawed hand gesturing at the holographic display. Images of previous tournaments appeared, showing Zentari warriors, Krell shock troops, and Vorganian blade masters locked in combat. This year, as always, the rules honor the traditions of close combat. No projectile weapons. No energy weapons. You will face your opponents with honor, using only approved melee weapons and your own physical abilities. The human section grew quiet. Jake felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling on his shoulders. These rules had been in place since the Academy's founding 200 years ago, long before humans had even achieved faster-than-light travel. The rules favored species with natural physical advantages. Zentari could lift 4 times what a human could lift. Krell had armored skin that could turn a blade. Forgans moved so fast they seemed to teleport in short bursts. In the 15 years since humans had joined the Academy, no human cadet had ever advanced past the second round of the tournament. Approved weapons include plasma blade staffs, vibro swords, shock mauls, and traditional melee weapons that meet safety standards, Vex Thor announced. Your instructors will provide the complete list. Remember, the tournament exists to prove your capability in honorable combat, not to showcase cowardly long-range tactics. Jake noticed the way Vex Thor's eyes lingered on the human section when he said the word cowardly. It was not exactly a secret that the Zentari considered human reliance on firearms and technology to be somehow dishonorable. Never mind that humans had survived on Earth, a death world by most galactic standards, by being smart enough to invent tools that compensated for their physical limitations. The assembly continued with bracket announcements and training schedules. Jake barely listened. He was already planning which weapons to focus on for the next 3 months. Maybe the shock maul would work better than the vibrosword he had tried last year. Maybe he could build up enough strength to actually compete with opponents who outweighed him by 100 kilograms. After the assembly ended, cadets flooded toward the exits. Jake walked slowly, lost in thought, until someone tapped his shoulder. He turned to find Claire Morrison standing behind him. She was one of the human instructors, though she taught mostly advanced tactical theory rather than basic combat. She was in her early 40s, with short brown hair that had started to gray at the temples and eyes that always seemed to be evaluating everything around her. "Lieutenant Palmer," she said, "walk with me." It was not really a request. Jake followed her out of the assembly hall and down a corridor that led away from the main training centers. Danny jogged to catch up with them, and Claire did not send him away. "You heard the rules," Claire said as they walked. "No projectile weapons." "Yes, instructor. Jake replied, unsure where this conversation was going. And what do you think about that? She asked. Jake hesitated. Criticizing the tournament rules felt dangerous, but Claire was watching him with an expression that suggested she wanted an honest answer, not a diplomatic one. I think the rules favor species with greater physical strength than natural weapons, he said carefully, which makes it difficult for humans to compete on an equal basis. Claire smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been proven right about something. Exactly. The rules favor certain species. They have for 2 centuries. But here's the interesting thing, Palmer. The rules say no projectile weapons. They specify gunpowder weapons, railguns, energy projection weapons, and anything that uses chemical or electrical propulsion. Very specific language. They stopped in front of a storage room Jake had never noticed before. Claire placed her palm on the security scanner and the door slid open. Inside was a small climate-controlled space filled with carefully preserved equipment. Most of it looked ancient. My family's been soldiers for a very long time, Claire said, walking to a case mounted on the far wall. We keep traditions alive. We remember where we came from. She opened the case and lifted out something Jake recognized from history classes but had never seen in person. It was made of wood and metal, beautifully preserved, with a curved bow mounted horizontally on a stalk. A crossbow. And not a modern recreation, but an actual medieval weapon. This is 1,001 years old, Claire said softly, handling it with obvious reverence. It belonged to my ancestor who fought in what we used to call the Crusades. It passed down through 28 generations of Morrisons, all of them soldiers, all of them people who understood one critical truth. She looked up at Jake and Danny, and her eyes were fierce. Humans do not win by being stronger. We win by being smarter. We adapt. We innovate. We take what we have and we make it work against opponents who should, by all logic, destroy us. Jake stared at the crossbow. Instructor Morrison, are you suggesting... I am not suggesting anything, Claire interrupted. I am telling you that this weapon meets every requirement in the tournament rules. It uses no gunpowder, no chemicals, no electrical propulsion. It is a simple mechanical device powered by tension and release. It is, by the exact wording of the regulations, not a projectile weapon as they define it. Danny let out a breath that was almost a laugh. The rules are based on modern weapon classifications. They never thought about something this old. Exactly, Claire said. She carefully returned the crossbow to its case. Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours, Training Hall 7. If you want to learn how our ancestors punched above their weight class, be there. Bring any other human cadets who are tired of losing because they were not born with claws and fangs. She sealed the case and walked toward the door. Jake and Danny hurried after her. Instructor Vextor will challenge this, Jake said. Let him. I've read the regulations 17 times. I've already submitted my request to Commander Zyla for approval. The tournament celebrates honorable combat and traditional weapons. This crossbow is more traditional than anything else that will be in that arena. She left them standing in the corridor. Jake looked at Danny, and Danny looked back at him with wide eyes. She's actually serious, Danny said. Yeah, Jake replied. She really is. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake felt something other than resignation about the tournament. It was not quite hope yet, but it was close. Training Hall 7 was smaller than the main combat arenas, tucked away in one of the older sections of Kepler, 7 Station. Jake arrived at exactly 0600 hours to find Danny already there, along with 6 other human cadets. Claire Morrison stood at the center of the hall, with the crossbow laid carefully on a table beside her. 8 of you, Claire said, looking at each of them in turn. That's a start. Where are the other 24 human cadets? A woman named Lisa Warner spoke up. She was tall and lean, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight braid. Most of them think this is a waste of time, Instructor. They said they would rather train with conventional approved weapons. Claire nodded slowly. They're not wrong to be skeptical. This will not be easy. But if you are here, I assume you are willing to try something different. We're willing, Jake said, and the others murmured agreement. Claire picked up the crossbow and held it so everyone could see it clearly. This weapon was designed in Europe around the 10th century. Humans created it to solve a specific problem. Armored knights on horseback were nearly unstoppable in close combat. They had better equipment, better training, and they had been preparing for war since childhood. A peasant farmer could train for years and still could not match a knight in hand-to-hand fighting. She walked slowly around the group as she spoke, So humans did what humans do best. We changed the rules of engagement. A crossbow requires very little strength to use compared to a regular bow. More importantly, it could punch through armor that would turn aside swords and spears. A farmer with 2 weeks of training could kill a knight who had trained his entire life. Danny raised his hand. But, instructor, the tournament does not allow killing. Correct, Claire said, but the principle remains the same. We do not need to be stronger than Centauri or Krell or Vorgans. We need to fight smarter. We need to use our brains to overcome their physical advantages. She set the crossbow down and activated a holographic display. An image of a Zentari warrior appeared, rotating slowly in the air. Vexthor and his people dominate the tournament because they are physically superior in close combat. Their reach is longer, their strength is greater, their natural weapons are devastating. The current tournament format plays to all their advantages. The hologram changed to show a combat scenario. A human with a vibro sword faced a Zentari with a plasma blade staff. In close quarters, we lose. Every time. Our best human cadet last year was Kevin Zhang, and he lasted 42 seconds against a mid-ranked Zentari. Kevin, who was standing near the back of the group, nodded grimly. He was a stocky man with engineering skills, and he had the bruises to prove he had fought hard in last year's tournament. But what if we do not fight in close quarters? Claire asked. The hologram shifted to show a human with a crossbow, maintaining distance from the same Zentari opponent. A crossbow has an effective range of 60 to 80 meters. Tournament arenas are 100 meters in diameter. We can control the engagement distance. Lisa stepped forward, studying the hologram with professional interest. I have archery experience from Earth, competitive target shooting.
But a crossbow is different from a compound bow. Yes and no, Claire said.
The aiming principles are similar, but a crossbow has advantages. The bolt is held under tension until you are ready to fire, so you can take your time to aim. There is less upper body strength required, and the learning curve is shorter. She handed the crossbow to Lisa, who accepted it carefully. This is beautiful, Lisa said softly. The craftsmanship is incredible. My family has maintained it for 1,000 years, Claire said. But we cannot use just this one in the tournament. We need to have backups made, and we need them to meet modern safety standards while maintaining the mechanical principles. Kevin moved closer, his eyes lighting up with the kind of interest only an engineer could have for an ancient mechanism. Instructor, if you allow me to examine this, I can create detailed specifications. We could fabricate replicas using the station's manufacturing facilities. Modern materials, improved durability, but the same basic design. That is exactly what I need, Claire said. But be careful with it, Kevin. It is irreplaceable. For the next hour, Claire walked them through the basics of crossbow operation. She demonstrated how to load the bolt, how to draw the string back using the mechanical crank, how to aim and release. Each cadet took turns handling the weapon, getting a feel for its weight and balance. Jake found it surprisingly intuitive. The crossbow was heavier than he expected, but once it was loaded and ready, holding it steady was much easier than trying to keep a regular bow drawn. He sighted down the length of a bolt at a target 50 meters away and squeezed the trigger. The bolt flew straight and true, slamming into the outer ring of the target with a solid thunk. Not bad for a first shot, Claire said. But you will need to do much better than that. By the end of the session, all 8 cadets had fired at least 10 shots each. Lisa was the natural standout, placing 3 bolts in the center ring. Kevin had already started sketching designs for improved versions on his datapad. As they were packing up, the door to the training hall slid open. Commander Zyla entered, followed by a being that looked like someone had combined a mantis with a scholar. This was Professor Cormandus, the station's expert on historical weapons and combat techniques. His compound eyes could focus independently, and right now both of them were locked on the crossbow. Instructor Morrison, Commander Zyla said. She was Valen, a species that resembled tall, slender humanoids with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. I have reviewed your request to use this weapon in the tournament. The training hall went silent. Jake held his breath. Professor Cormandus has examined the regulations and the weapon specifications you provided, Zyla continued. Professor, your assessment? Cormandus clicked his mandibles together. A sound that Jake had learned meant he was thinking carefully. The weapon is fascinating. A purely mechanical device using stored potential energy and bent materials. No chemical propulsion, no electrical components, no energy projection. By the precise wording of Tournament Regulation 7.3, it does not meet the definition of a prohibited projectile weapon. However, he continued, and Jake's heart sank, the spirit of the regulations clearly intends to prevent long-range combat and encourage honorable close-quarters engagement. With respect, Professor, Claire said calmly. The regulations say what they say. The Academy has always prided itself on following precise rules. Many species have used the exact wording of regulations to their advantage over the years. Vorgons use their natural phase-shifting ability, which some consider an unfair advantage. Krell have armored skin that makes them nearly immune to certain improved weapons. Should we ban natural abilities too? Cormandus tilted his head, studying her. An interesting argument. Commander Xyla raised one long-fingered hand. I am not here to debate philosophy. The question is simple. Does this weapon violate the written regulations? Yes or no? No, Cormandi said after a long pause. It does not violate the written regulations. Xyla nodded. Then it is approved for tournament use. However, Instructor Morrison, I want to be clear about something. Instructor Vexthor is extremely displeased about this. He has already filed 3 formal complaints. He believes you are making a mockery of the tournament traditions. I am not mocking anything, Claire said. I am teaching my cadets to compete using the tools and intelligence available to them. That is what instructors are supposed to do. Nevertheless, Xyla said, expect resistance. Vexthor is already training specifically to counter this tactic. He has announced he will personally enter the tournament this year to demonstrate why the old ways, as he calls them, are superior. Vexthor had not competed in the tournament for 5 years. He was far beyond the skill level of any cadet. If he entered, it would be to prove a point by crushing whoever used the crossbow. Let him enter, Claire said simply. We will be ready. After Xyla and Cormandis left, the cadets gathered around Claire. Instructor, Kevin said quietly, if Vexthor enters and defeats us badly, it will set back human respect at this academy by years. Yes, Claire agreed. Which is why we cannot afford to lose. Kevin, I need those replica crossbows in 2 weeks. Lisa, you are going to train the others in aiming and accuracy. Jake, you are going to study every recording of Zentari combat tactics we can access. We need to understand exactly how they fight so we can counter it. She looked at each of them. This is not just about winning a tournament. This is about proving that humans belong here, that we can compete at the highest levels, not despite our physical limitations, but because we are smart enough to overcome them. Our ancestors survived ice ages, predators, diseases, and each other by being adaptable. That is our greatest weapon, and it is time the galaxy saw it in action. Jake felt something shift inside him. This was more than just tournament preparation. This was about changing how every species at the Academy saw humanity. We will not let you down, Instructor, he said. Claire smiled. I know you will not. Now get some rest. Tomorrow we start real training, and I promise you it will be the hardest 3 months of your life. The next morning, Jake arrived at Training Hall 7 to find Kevin already there with 3 prototype crossbows laid out on a workbench. They looked similar to Claire's ancient weapon, but were constructed from modern composite materials that gleamed under the hall's lighting. I worked all night, Kevin said, his eyes red from lack of sleep. These are made from titanium alloy and carbon fiber. They are stronger and lighter than the original, but the mechanical principles are identical. I even improved the cranking mechanism to make reloading faster. Claire entered and examined the weapons carefully. She picked up one, tested the weight, drew back the string with the crank, and sighted down its length. Excellent work, Kevin. How many can you produce? The fabrication lab can make 2 per day if I supervise the process, Kevin said. We should have enough for all 8 cadets within a week. Make 12, Claire said. We need spares in case anything breaks during training. Over the following days, the training intensified. Claire divided each session into specific skills. Mornings focused on accuracy and speed. Lisa took charge of these sessions, drawing on her archery background to teach proper stance, breathing control, and target acquisition. She was a patient teacher, correcting grip and posture with gentle adjustments. The crossbow does most of the work, Lisa explained to the group on the 3rd day, but you still need consistency. Same stance every time, same breathing pattern, same trigger squeeze. Your body needs to remember the motion until it becomes automatic. Jake practiced until his shoulders ached and his fingers developed calluses from the trigger mechanism. He started at 20 meters, then 30, then 50. By the end of the first week, he could consistently hit a target the size of a Zentari chest plate at 60 meters. Afternoons were dedicated to movement and tactics. Claire brought in holographic recordings of previous tournaments, and they studied how different species fought. The Zentari favored aggressive charges, using their superior reach and strength to overwhelm opponents quickly. The Krell were slower but nearly indestructible, waiting for opponents to exhaust themselves before counterattacking. The Vorgons used hit-and-run tactics. their natural speed allowing them to strike and retreat before enemies could respond.
Notice the pattern, Claire said during one session, freezing a hologram of a Zentari warrior mid-charge. Every species here relies on their natural advantages.
They have trained to maximize what they are already good at, but what happens when they face an opponent who refuses to fight on their terms? Danny, who had been taking extensive notes throughout all the training sessions, raised his hand. You have to adapt, and adaptation takes time. If we can control the distance and force them to fight at range, they will be operating outside their comfort zone.
Exactly, Claire said.
In combat, confidence matters. When you force an opponent to do something they are not practiced at, they make mistakes. Word of the human training session spread through the academy. At first, other cadets were amused. Jake overheard a group of Zentari laughing about it in the dining hall, calling it a desperate gimmick. But as the weeks passed, the mockery began to fade, replaced by curiosity. One afternoon in the third week, Jake was practicing movement drills when he noticed a small crowd had gathered outside Training Hall 7. They were watching through the transparent wall as the human cadets ran patterns, firing crossbows at moving targets while maintaining distance from holographic opponents. Among the watchers was instructor Marathal. She was Pelasian, a species known for their peaceful nature and philosophical approach to conflict resolution. Pelasians rarely competed in a combat tournament, as their physiology was not suited for fighting. She caught Jake's eye and nodded with what appeared to be approval. After the session ended, Marathal requested permission to enter the training hall.
Claire welcomed her inside. "Instructor Morrison," Marathal said in her soft, melodic voice, "I have been observing your methods.
What you are teaching is not just weapon technique, you are teaching tactical thinking." "That is correct," Claire said. "This is something my people could benefit from learning," Marathal continued. "We have always avoided the tournament because we lack physical prowess, but perhaps we have been thinking about it incorrectly. Perhaps the question is not how to be stronger, but how to be more strategic." Claire smiled. "You are welcome to observe any of our sessions, Instructor Marathal. The principles apply beyond just crossbows. They apply to any situation where you must overcome a disadvantage through intelligence." Word of Marathal's interest spread even further. Soon, cadets from other species began finding excuses to walk past Training Hall 7 during practice hours. Some were openly skeptical, but others watched with genuine interest. The turning point came during the fourth week. Jake was running a live simulation against a holographic Zentari opponent when the hall doors opened and Vexthor himself entered, followed by 4 of his best Zentari students. The training hall went silent. "Continue," Vexthor said, his voice carrying easily across the space. "I wish to see this primitive technique that has generated so much discussion." Claire nodded to Jake. "Run the simulation again." Full difficulty. Jake's heart pounded as he took his position. The holographic Zentari appeared 60 meters away, armed with a plasma blade staff. When the simulation started, the hologram charged immediately, covering ground with terrifying speed. Jake backpedaled, keeping his eyes on the target while his feet followed the movement pattern he had practiced hundreds of times. He raised the crossbow, led the target slightly to account for movement, and fired. The bolt struck the hologram in the shoulder joint, where armor was typically weakest. In a real match, that would have forced the opponent to drop their weapon. The hologram did not stop. It kept charging, now only 40 meters away. Jake reloaded while moving, his hands working the crank mechanism without needing to look at it. 30 meters. He fired again, striking the leg joint. The hologram stumbled but continued forward, 20 meters. One more reload, and this time Jake aimed for the center mass. Bolt hit true, and the hologram dissipated as the simulation registered a decisive hit. The hall remained quiet. Jake turned to face Vexthor, breathing hard but trying to keep his expression neutral. Vexthor's amber eyes were unreadable. "You maintained distance effectively. Your accuracy under pressure is adequate. But you faced a hologram, not a living opponent who can think and adapt." "That is true, Instructor," Jake said. "But the same could be said for any training simulation." One of the Zentari students, a young warrior named Drakmor, stepped forward. "With respect, Instructor Vexthor, I would like to test myself against this method. A practice match, non-lethal settings." Vexthor considered this, then nodded slowly. "Very well. But we use practice weapons only. Morrison, do your cadets have non-lethal bolts?" "We do," Claire said. "Padded tips that register hits without causing injury. Kevin designed them specifically for practice matches. The practice arena was quickly prepared. Drakmor armed himself with a padded staff, and Jake loaded his crossbow with a practice bolt. They took positions at opposite ends of the arena. A neutral referee, another instructor from a different species, supervised the match. When the signal sounded, Drakmor charged exactly as the hologram had. But he was smarter. He zigzagged as he ran, making himself a harder target. Jake fired and missed as Drakmor juked left. The Zentari was fast, covering the distance much quicker than the simulation had suggested. Jake reloaded while backpedaling, but Drakmor was adapting to the pattern. The Zentari began to predict Jake's movements, cutting off angles and forcing him toward the arena wall. 50 meters became 40, then 30. Jake fired again. This time the bolt caught Drakmor in the side, but the Zentari's natural toughness meant he barely slowed. 20 meters. Jake reloaded frantically, his hands moving as fast as they could, but he knew he would not have time for another shot. Drakmor closed to striking range and swept his staff at Jake's legs. Jake jumped, but the staff caught him anyway, and he went down hard. The match was over. Drakmor offered a hand and pulled Jake to his feet. "You fight well for a human. If you had one more second to reload, you might have won." "The key word is might," Vexthor said from the sidelines. "In real combat, you do not get second chances. Speed matters. Strength matters. These are things your weapon cannot change, Lieutenant Palmer." But Claire was smiling. "That was Jake's 14th day of training with a crossbow. Drakmor, how many years have you trained in Zentari combat methods?" Drakmor hesitated. 7 years, Instructor Morrison. 7 years versus 14 days, Claire repeated. And Jake nearly won. "Imagine what he will be capable of after 3 months of training. Imagine what all 8 of my cadets will be capable of." Vexthor's expression hardened. "We shall see, Morrison. I have entered the tournament myself this year. I will demonstrate personally why these games are no substitute for true warrior training." "I welcome the challenge," Claire said calmly. "It will be an honor to face you." After Vexthor and his students left, the human cadets gathered around Jake. "You did great," Lisa said. "Another half second and you had him." "But I did not have that half second," Jake said, frustrated. "Vexthor is right. Speed matters." "Then we get faster," Kevin said. "I can modify the reload mechanism. Maybe reduce it by 20%. Claire put a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You all did exactly what you needed to do today. You showed everyone watching that humans can compete. You showed them we have a chance. Now we build on that. We have 8 weeks left before the tournament. We make every day count." That evening, as Jake returned to his quarters, he found a message waiting on his personal console. It was from Instructor Marathal. "Lieutenant Palmer, your performance today was enlightening. You demonstrated that victory is not always about superior strength. Sometimes it is about superior thinking. I hope you continue to develop these skills. The galaxy needs more warriors who fight with their minds as well as their bodies." Jake saved the message and allowed himself a small smile. They were not winning yet, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like humans were being taken seriously. That alone was worth every hour of brutal training. The tournament arrived on a cold morning, at least by station standards. The environmental controls in the main arena had been adjusted to accommodate the various species competing, creating a neutral temperature that left Jake feeling slightly chilled. He stood in the preparation area with the other human cadets, each of them holding their crossbows and trying not to show their nervousness. The arena itself was a massive circular space, 100 meters in diameter, with seating that rose up in tiers on all sides. Transparent energy barriers protected the audience while allowing a perfect view of the combat below. Holographic displays floated above the arena, showing bracket information and competitor statistics in multiple languages. 12,000 beings watching in person, Danny said quietly, staring up at the crowded seats. "And the broadcast is going out to 300 worlds across the galaxy?" "Do not think about that," Lisa said. She was checking her crossbow for the 5th time, making sure the string tension was perfect. "Just focus on your opponent and your training." Claire entered the preparation room carrying a datapad. "Bracket assignments are final. Jake, you are in match 7 against a Zentari warrior named Kreshtar. He is ranked mid-tier, strong, but not exceptional. Lisa, you face a Krell in match 12. Kevin, you drew a Vorgan in match 3. Kevin's face went pale. Vorgans were notoriously difficult opponents because of their speed. "Understood, Instructor." "Remember what we practiced," Claire said, making eye contact with each of them. "Control the distance. Stay calm. Do not let them dictate the terms of engagement. You are not trying to overpower them. You are trying to outsmart them." The first matches began. Jake watched on a monitor as the Zentari faced a Krell in a brutal exchange that ended when the Zentari landed a strike to the Krell's unarmored neck joint.
The crowd roared its approval.
The second match was faster, a Vorgan using incredible speed to strike a Dravek's opponent 3 times before the larger being could react. Match 3 was Kevin's turn. Jake and the others moved to the observation window to watch. Kevin entered the arena carrying his crossbow and a belt of practice bolts. His opponent, a Vorgan named Thresh, appeared on the opposite side. Thresh was tall and thin, with forearms and skin that seemed to shimmer and shift colors. The starting signal sounded. Thresh became a blur of motion, crossing 30 meters in the time it took Jake's eyes to blink. But Kevin had anticipated this. He had already fired before Thresh even started moving, aiming not at where the Vorgan was, but where he calculated Thresh would be. The bolt caught Thresh in the chest, and the impact sensor flared bright green, indicating a valid hit. Thresh stumbled, surprised, but recovered quickly. He changed direction, zigzagging now instead of charging straight. Kevin reloaded and fired again, but this time Thresh was ready. The Vorgan dodged, moving so fast he seemed to teleport sideways. 50 meters became 30. Kevin backed up reloading, but Thresh was learning the pattern. 20 meters. Kevin fired and missed. 10 meters. Thresh closed the distance and struck with 2 of his forearms. Kevin tried to dodge, but the Vorgan's speed was overwhelming. The impact sensors on Kevin's training suit lit up red. Match over. Kevin walked off the arena floor with his head down, but Claire met him at the entrance. "You got first blood," she said, against a Vorgan. "Do you understand how significant that is? 3 months ago, you would have lost without landing a single hit. But I still lost," Kevin said. "Yes, you did, but you proved the method works. You proved that with proper tactics, humans can compete even against opponents with superior natural abilities." The matches continued. More Zentari won. A few Krell advanced. The Vorgans dominated their brackets. When match 7 was called, Jake's stomach tightened into a knot. He walked onto the arena floor and the crowd noise washed over him like a physical force. Thousands of beings from dozens of species all watching, all waiting to see if the human with the primitive weapon could actually compete. He forced himself to breathe slowly and focus. Kreshtar entered from the opposite side. He was a typical Zentari warrior, tall and powerfully built, his gray and black striped fur immaculate. He carried a plasma blade staff that hummed with barely contained energy. When he saw Jake and the crossbow, his lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing sharp teeth. The referee, a neutral Pelasian official, raised one hand. "Competitors ready. Begin on my mark. 3, 1, engage." Kreshtar charged immediately, exactly as Jake had expected. Zentari warriors were trained to close distance quickly and use their superior strength in close combat. Jake backpedaled smoothly, his feet following the movement pattern he had practiced 10,000 times over the past 3 months. He raised the crossbow, controlled his breathing, and fired. The bolt flew straight and true, striking Kreshtar in the left shoulder. The impact sensor glowed green. First blood to the human. The crowd made a surprised sound, a collective intake of breath across 12,000 beings. Kreshtar snarled and kept charging, adjusting his grip on the staff to compensate for the shoulder hit. He was at 50 meters now. Jake reloaded while moving, his hands working the crank mechanism automatically. The crowd noise faded away. There was only the target, the distance, and the shot. 40 meters. Jake fired again. This time Kreshtar was ready and dodged, moving faster than Jake had anticipated. The bolt missed by half a meter, 30 meters. Jake reloaded, but his hands fumbled slightly. The crank caught for a half second before releasing. That tiny delay was all Kreshtar needed. 20 meters. The Zentari warrior changed tactics, no longer charging in a straight line, but angling to cut off Jake's retreat. Jake fired, but the bolt went wide as he moved. 15 meters. Jake reloaded desperately, but he knew the math. Kreshtar would reach him before he could fire again. 10 meters. Kreshtar raised his staff for the finishing strike. Jake made a split-second decision. Instead of completing the reload, he dropped low and rolled to the side. The plasma blade staff whooshed through the air where his head had been a moment before. Jake came up from the roll, finished cranking the crossbow, and fired at point-blank range. The bolt struck Kreshtar in the center of the chest. The impact sensor blazed bright green. The referee's whistle sounded. Match to Lieutenant Palmer. Victory by center mass strike. The arena erupted. Half the crowd was cheering, the other half was stunned into silence. Jake stood there breathing hard, not quite believing what had just happened. Kreshtar stared at him for a long moment. then slowly nodded with what looked like respect before walking off the arena floor. Claire was waiting when Jake exited. She did not say anything, just gripped his shoulder firmly. That was enough. Over the next 2 hours, more matches unfolded. Lisa faced her Krell opponent in match 12 and won by maintaining perfect distance and placing 3 bolts in the gaps of the Krell's armor. Another human cadet named Greg lost to his Centauri, but only after landing 2 solid hits. A cadet named Amy managed to defeat a Dravix fighter who had underestimated her completely. By the time the first round ended, 4 humans had advanced to the second round. It was more than had ever advanced before in the tournament's history. The second round began after a short break. Jake's next opponent was another Centauri, this one more experienced and cautious. The warrior had watched Jake's first match and learned from it. He did not charge blindly, but advanced carefully, using his staff to deflect one of Jake's bolts mid-flight. Jake adjusted his tactics, aiming for the legs instead of center mass, trying to slow his opponent down. It worked partially. He landed a hit on the Centauri's knee, but the warrior pushed through the pain and closed the distance. This time, when Jake tried to roll away, the Centauri anticipated it and caught him with a staff strike to the ribs. Jake was eliminated, but he had made it to the second round. That was further than any human had gone in 5 years. Lisa continued to advance, defeating a Vorgan in the second round with a brilliant strategy that involved using the arena obstacles to break line of sight and force her opponent into predictable movement patterns. She made it to the quarterfinals before facing a top-ranked Centauri warrior who proved too experienced and too fast for her tactics. When the quarterfinals ended, the bracket for the semifinals was announced. The crowd grew quiet as the names appeared on the holographic display. The final 4 competitors were 2 Centauri warriors, 1 Krell champion, and Lisa Warner. Lisa had made it to the semifinals. A human had made it to the semifinals of the Galactic Combat Tournament, but the celebration in the human preparation area was muted when they saw who Lisa would face. Her opponent was not one of the other Centauri warriors or the Krell champion. Her opponent was Instructor Vextor himself, who had defeated every opponent so far without receiving a single hit. Claire pulled Lisa aside. He is going to come at you with everything he has. He wants to prove that human tactics are inferior, that our methods are just tricks that fail against truly skilled opponents. What do I do? Lisa asked. Her confidence seemed shaken for the first time. Claire looked at her steadily. You do what humans have always done. You adapt.
You find a way to win that he does not expect.
Vexthor is powerful and skilled, but he is also proud. Pride creates blind spots. Find his blind spot, and you find your victory. The semifinal matches would begin the next day. As Jake and the others left the arena, he noticed the way other species were looking at them now. Not with amusement or dismissal, but with genuine respect. Some were even approaching to offer congratulations. Instructor Marathal found them in the corridor outside the arena. What you accomplished today will be remembered, she said softly. You changed what everyone thought was possible. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, you have already won something more important than a tournament. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept replaying the matches in his mind, thinking about what worked and what did not. Somewhere else on the station, he knew Lisa was probably doing the same thing, preparing to face the most dangerous opponent any of them had encountered. Tomorrow would determine whether the human approach was truly viable or just a temporary surprise that skilled opponents could overcome. Tomorrow would show the galaxy whether humans belonged among the elite combat forces of civilized space. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. The morning of the semifinals arrived, with unusual silence in the human quarters. Lisa sat alone in the preparation room, methodically checking her crossbow for the 100th time. Jake, Danny, Kevin, and the other human cadets gathered nearby, wanting to offer support but unsure what to say. Claire entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Lisa and sat down beside her. How are you feeling? Terrified, Lisa admitted. Vexthor has not lost a match in 7 years. He has been training for this his entire life. I have been training with a crossbow for 3 months. True, Claire said. But you have something he does not have. What is that? The ability to surprise him. Vexthor knows exactly how strong he is, exactly how fast he is, exactly what his capabilities are. He has built his entire fighting style around maximizing those strengths. But that also means he has become predictable. He does the same things because they always work. Lisa took a sip of coffee and considered this. So I need to do something he does not expect. Exactly. And remember, this is not about humiliating him. This is about earning respect. Show him that human intelligence is just as valuable as Centauri's strength. The arena was even more crowded than the day before. News of Lisa's advancement had spread across the galaxy, and beings from hundreds of worlds had tuned in to watch a human face a legendary Zentari warrior. The other semifinal match would happen first, with the Krell champion facing a Zentari warrior named Drakmor. Jake watched that match from the preparation area. It was brutal and efficient. Drakmor used superior speed and technique to strike the Krell's weak points repeatedly until the champion could no longer continue. The match lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, Drakmor barely looked tired. "He will be in the finals," Danny said quietly. "Either Lisa faces him or Vexthor does." Then it was time. Lisa stood, picked up her crossbow, and walked toward the arena entrance. The other humans followed her to the threshold, but could go no further. "Remember the training," Jake said. "Remember everything we practiced." Lisa nodded and stepped through the entrance onto the arena floor. The crowd noise hit her like a wall of sound. 12,000 beings watching in person, and millions more across the galaxy watching broadcasts. She forced herself to tune it out and focus on the arena itself. Vexthor entered from the opposite side. He carried a traditional Zentari warblade, a weapon 7 feet long with a curved edge that could cut through modern armor. Even in practice mode with dulled edges and impact sensors, it looked terrifying. Vexthor himself moved with absolute confidence, his gray and black fur rippling over powerful muscles. The Pelasian referee took position at the center. This is a semi-final match. Standard tournament rules apply: victory by impact sensor confirmation, incapacitation, or yield. Competitors take your positions. Lisa moved to her starting mark. She could feel her heart pounding, but kept her breathing controlled. Across the arena, Vexthor watched her with amber eyes that revealed nothing. "Begin," the referee said, and immediately moved to the edge of the arena. Vexthor did not charge. That was the first surprise. Instead, he began walking forward at a measured pace, holding his warblade in a defensive position. He had studied the human tactics. He knew that charging made him predictable. Lisa raised her crossbow and fired. The bolt flew true, aimed at Vexthor's center mass. But the Zentari warrior moved his blade with incredible speed and actually deflected the bolt in mid-flight. It clattered harmlessly against the arena wall. The crowd gasped. No one had deflected a crossbow bolt before. Lisa reloaded and backed up, maintaining distance. Vexthor continued his steady advance. 50 meters. Lisa fired again, this time aiming low at his legs. Vexthor shifted his blade down and deflected that bolt too. 40 meters.
Lisa was beginning to understand the problem. Vexthor was not fighting like the other Zentari warriors.
It was not relying on speed and aggression.
He was being patient, using his superior reflexes to defend while slowly closing the distance. She fired a third time, and again he deflected it. 30 meters. Lisa reloaded, but her mind was racing. If she could not hit him at range, the entire strategy collapsed. Once he got close enough, his superior strength and reach would end the match quickly. 25 meters. Lisa made a decision. Instead of firing, she ran laterally, moving along the arena perimeter to change the angle. Vexthor adjusted his approach, cutting across to intercept her path. She fired while moving, and this time the bolt came from an unexpected angle. Vexthor deflected it, but his blade moved a fraction slower. Lisa saw the pattern now. Vexthor could deflect bolts coming from directly ahead because he could track them easily, but shots from angles, shots while she was moving, those were harder for him to judge. She kept moving, circling around the arena, forcing Vexthor to constantly adjust his position. She fired from the side. He deflected but had to turn his whole body to do it. She fired again immediately after reloading, not giving him time to reset his stance. This bolt came closer, passing within inches of his shoulder. 20 meters. 15. Vexthor was getting closer despite her movement. Lisa's legs were starting to burn from the constant running, but she could not stop. She fired again, then immediately dove and rolled to the side. Vexthor's blade whistled through the space where she'd been standing a moment before. She came up from the roll and fired at almost point-blank range, 10 meters away. Vexthor brought his blade up to deflect, but Lisa had aimed not at him but at his blade. The bolt struck the flat of the blade and deflected upward over his shoulder. The impact threw off Vexthor's balance for just a moment. Lisa used that moment to reload and create distance again. 20 meters. She was breathing hard now, sweat running down her face. Vexthor looked barely winded. "You fight well," Vexthor called across the arena. "Better than I expected. But you cannot run forever." "I do not need to run forever," Lisa called back. "I just need to run long enough." She fired again, and this time she aimed not at Vexthor but at the ground in front of him. The bolt struck the arena floor and bounced upward at an unexpected angle. Vexthor deflected it, but the unusual trajectory forced him to move his blade in an awkward way. Lisa saw her opening. She fired her next bolt while Vexthor's blade was still out of position from the previous deflection. The bolt struck him in the right shoulder, and the impact sensor glowed green. The crowd erupted in shocked noise, first blood to the human. Vexthor looked down at his shoulder, then back at Lisa. Something changed in his expression. It was not anger exactly, it was respect. "You are clever," he said. "You use tactics I have never encountered. This is worthy of honor." He adjusted his grip on the warblade and began advancing again, but this time with a different energy. He was no longer fighting to prove a point. He was fighting because his opponent had earned his full effort. Lisa fired again and again, using every trick she had learned. Angled shots, bouncing shots, firing while moving, firing immediately after rolling. Some bolts Vexthor deflected, but others came close. She managed to land 2 more hits, one on his leg and one on his left arm, but the distance kept shrinking. 12 meters. 10. 8. Lisa's arms were shaking from exhaustion now, and her reload time was getting slower. Vexthor could see it. 6 meters. Vexthor moved with sudden speed, closing the final distance faster than Lisa could react. His warblade swept toward her in a controlled arc. She tried to dodge, but was too tired. The blade struck her training suit across the midsection, and her impact sensor flared bright red. The referee's whistle sounded. Match to instructor Vexthor. Victory by center mass strike. Lisa stood there, chest heaving, unable to quite process that it was over. She had lost. But then Vexthor did something unexpected. He set down his warblade and walked over to her. He extended one large clawed hand. "You have my respect, Cadet Warner," he said formally. "You fought with intelligence and courage. You used your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. This is the mark of a true warrior." Lisa shook his hand and the crowd went absolutely wild. Beings from every species were on their feet, cheering for both competitors. As Lisa walked off the arena floor, Claire met her with a smile that held no disappointment. "You did exactly what I hoped you would do. You showed everyone, that humans belong here." The finals took place an hour later. Vexthor faced Drakmor in a match that showcased traditional Zentari combat at its finest. Vexthor won, as most had expected, and accepted the championship trophy with quiet dignity. But when the closing ceremonies began, Vexthor did something that surprised everyone. He requested permission to address the assembled crowd. "This tournament has taught me something important," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "For many years, I believed that physical strength and natural weapons were the only true measures of a warrior's worth. I looked down on species that relied on tools and tactics rather than their own bodies." He paused and looked directly at the human section. "I was wrong. What the humans have demonstrated over these past days is that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability are just as valuable as strength and speed. Perhaps more valuable, because these qualities can be applied to any situation." He gestured to Lisa, who was sitting with the other human cadets. "Cadet Warner landed 3 hits on me. 3. Do you understand how remarkable that is? I have fought in this tournament for 15 years, and only 5 opponents have ever landed even a single hit. She did it with a weapon that is 1,000 years old, using tactics that her instructor created specifically to overcome superior physical opponents. Vexthor set down the championship trophy. I propose a change to this academy and this tournament. We should celebrate not just physical prowess, but tactical thinking. We should create new competition categories that test intelligence and strategy, not just strength, because the galaxy needs warriors who can think as well as fight." The crowd erupted in applause. Not just humans, but beings from dozens of species. Later that evening, after the ceremonies ended, Claire gathered her cadets together in Training Hall 7-1, final time. The crossbows were carefully stored away, including her ancestral weapon that had started everything. "What you accomplished here goes beyond tournament wins and losses," she said. "You changed minds. You proved that humans have something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. Not because we are stronger or faster, but because we think differently. We adapt. We innovate. We find solutions that others miss." Jake looked at the ancient crossbow in its case. "What will you teach us next year, instructor?" Claire smiled. "That is for me to know and you to discover. But I can promise you this. Humans have thousands of years of clever ideas, of tools and tactics and strategies that helped us survive and thrive on Earth. We are just getting started showing the galaxy what we are capable of." Danny raised his hand. I looked into the Academy records today. Applications from human candidates have increased by 300% since the tournament ended. Everyone wants to learn the human approach to combat. Good, Claire said. The more they learn from us, the more we learn from them. That is how we build a better galaxy. Not by proving who is strongest, but by sharing what makes each species unique and valuable. As the cadets filed out of the training hall, Lisa lingered behind with Claire. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing we could do this. I never doubted it, Claire replied. I know what humans are capable of when we stop trying to compete on other people's terms and start using our own strengths. That lesson is worth more than any tournament victory. Lisa nodded and left, leaving Claire alone with her thoughts and her ancestor's crossbow. She picked up the ancient weapon one last time, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of history, and smiled. Humans had earned their place at the Academy not through strength or speed, but through the one thing that had always defined humanity, the ability to look at an impossible problem and find a way to solve it anyway.